Every few weeks somebody in the game's business pops up and says people need to stop demonizing generative AI. They say it like the public is just being dramatic, like we all woke up one day and decided to bully a spreadsheet. I always hear that and think the same thing. Nobody is mad at math. People are mad at the kind of person who stares at a human job and sees a rounding error. Let me start with the obvious. Generative AI is not a haunted toaster. It is not a magic wand. It is a tool that can do some tasks fast and do other tasks badly with incredible confidence. The problem is not the tool existing. The problem is the way executives talk about it, because they talk like they are doing charity work while quietly shopping for cheaper labor. It is the same vibe as a landlord telling you rent hikes are part of your growth journey. When a leader says stop demonizing AI, what they are really saying is stop noticing incentives. Stop noticing the pattern where every efficiency announcement is followed by fewer people doing more work for the same pay. Stop noticing that when the tool saves time, the savings rarely turn into rest. The savings turn into new deadlines, new scope, and a bigger target on the back of anyone who creates for a living. You can see it in the language. They never say, we use it to summarize crash logs and it never touches shipped art. They say they are exploring opportunities to enhance productivity. That sentence is the corporate version of a fog machine. It looks impressive on stage and it is useless for navigation. If the plan is ethical and simple, you can explain it in plain English. If you cannot, it is either messy, embarrassing, or both. Here is the part that always makes me laugh. The same people who want you to be calm also want to be vague. They want a blank check for trust. They want you to assume everything is fine while they keep the details in a drawer marked "Do not ask." That is not how trust works in any other part of life. If a restaurant told you the kitchen is leveraging innovation and refused to list ingredients, you would walk out. You would not be like, wow, I must stop demonizing cuisine. The next trick is the tool argument. They say a knife can chop vegetables or stab someone. Sure, great, congratulations on discovering objects. The problem is that this analogy conveniently skips the part where the knife was forged by melting down everybody else's knives without permission. People are not just worried about what the tool can do. They are worried about what went into building it and who gets paid when it replaces paid work. That concern is not an internet conspiracy. It is the natural reaction of anyone who has watched creative labor get devalued for decades. Artists already get asked for exposure. Writers already get asked to do a quick pass for free. Developers already get asked to crunch because the schedule is tight. Then a company shows up with a machine that can spit out infinite drafts, and the same company expects applause. It is like setting fire to a room and asking why people are so negative about warmth. Now I will say something that will annoy both camps, which means it is probably correct. Some uses of AI are boring and helpful. If you use it to sift logs, summarize bug reports, draft unit tests, or generate placeholder text that humans replace later, that can be fine. It is basically an assistant that does the tedious parts so humans can focus on judgment. That is the good case and it exists. But there is a second case that makes people nervous, and it should. The second case is when a studio uses generative output in shipped assets, then hides it behind vague talk, then gets caught, then acts offended that anyone cared. That is when you see the demonizing speech. It is a defensive speech. It is not an explanation. It is a request for free goodwill after a trust debt has already been created. The reason the debate gets so messy is that people keep lumping everything together. Using AI to autocomplete a repetitive function is not the same thing as generating concept art. Drafting a translation for a human editor to fix is not the same thing as generating a narrative script. A placeholder voice used for internal timing is not the same thing as cloning a performer in a finished product. These are different actions with different harms and different expectations. Pretending they are the same is lazy, and lazy thinking creates lazy rules. The public wants 3 simple things and companies keep refusing to provide them. People want disclosure. People want provenance. People want boundaries. Disclosure means you say where the tool touched what the customer sees. Provenance means you can explain what data sources and licenses are involved. Boundaries means you say what you will not do, even if it would save money. Instead, companies do the opposite. They do not disclose clearly. They do not talk about provenance unless forced. They do not set boundaries because boundaries restrict profit, and profit is the one boundary they respect. Let us talk about the speed fantasy, because it is the favorite sales pitch. Leaders love to say AI will let teams ship big games fast. That sounds amazing until you remember how deadlines work. Time savings do not automatically become quality. They become expectations. A manager sees 2 weeks saved and immediately spends it like a credit card. Suddenly the feature list grows, the schedule shrinks, and the team gets told to be grateful that the tool is helping. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of email. Email was supposed to make communication easier. Instead, it created a world where everybody expects an answer immediately. Faster tools do not give you freedom unless you defend that freedom. Otherwise, you just get a faster treadmill. So when someone says, Stop demonizing AI. My question is, what are you actually doing with it, and what are you refusing to do with it? If the answer is a pile of buzzwords, then the tool is not the issue. The issue is that you are trying to sell the audience on trust without offering terms. Here is what would actually calm people down. It is not a speech. It is a boring policy. You publish a clear statement that lists what AI is used for and what it is not used for. You state that shipped art, shipped writing, and shipped voice require human authorship and proper credits, unless you have explicit licenses and you disclose it. You keep logs internally so you can audit usage when disputes happen. You train your staff on verification, because these tools can be wrong in ways that look correct, which is why review still matters. If you do that, you will still get arguments, because the internet loves fighting. But you will have reduced the suspicion. You will have replaced guessing with information. People cannot be forced to agree, but they can be given enough truth to disagree honestly. Now let me aim the jokes where they belong, which is at corporate communication. When an executive says they are committed to responsible AI, I hear the same energy as someone saying they are committed to responsible partying. It sounds nice. It means nothing. Responsible is not a mood. Responsible is a list of actions and limits. If you cannot describe those limits, you are not responsible. You are just optimistic. When a leader says AI will unlock creativity, I also laugh because creativity was never locked. It was always there. What was missing was time and pay. You do not unlock creativity by replacing creators. You unlock it by funding them, giving them room, and letting them iterate. AI can help with iteration, but it cannot replace the part where a human decides what matters. Also, if you tell me AI will write most of the code, I will ask who cleans it up when it breaks, because the unglamorous truth is that AI can generate a lot of plausible-looking junk. It is like a friend who always volunteers to help you move, then shows up with flip-flops and a bad back. The help becomes another problem you have to manage. I do not want a future where every game feels like it was stitched together from average choices. I do not want worlds full of content that exists because it was cheap to generate. People already complain about soulless design. AI can make soulless design cheaper and faster. That is not progress. That is a discount on boredom. At the same time, I do not want a future where every tool is treated like forbidden knowledge. That is also stupid. A studio should be allowed to use automation for boring tasks, and creators should be allowed to use new tools to explore ideas, as long as the foundation is clean and the credits are honest. The goal is not purity. The goal is fairness and clarity. What really irritates me is how the whole conversation gets treated like a personality test. If you are skeptical, you get labeled anti-progress. If you are curious, you get labeled a shill. It is like everyone forgot you can hold two thoughts at once. AI can be useful, and the way it is deployed can still be shady. That is not a contradiction. That is the point. The executive promise is always the same. They say AI will free humans from grunt work. Great. Then the next sentence is that it will let them ship more. That is where the mask slips. If the goal is human freedom, you measure success in fewer late nights, fewer rushed launches, fewer burnouts, and more polish. If the goal is shipping more, you measure success in volume. Volume is not craft. Volume is what you chase when you want a content fire hose. Gamers are allergic to corporate promises because we have a long history with an industry that says it loves us while taking our lunch money. We were told always online was for our convenience, and then servers got shut down. We were told loot boxes were harmless fun, and then we got hearings. We were told day one patches were normal, and then we got unfinished releases. So when the same people show up and say this new thing is totally fine, do not be surprised when trust is not automatic. There is also a transparency problem. Companies will brag to investors that automation boosts productivity, then act offended when players wonder what got automated. You cannot sell the tool as a miracle in one room and as a harmless helper in another. Pick a story. If you pick miracle, accept that the audience will ask what got sacrificed. A boring label system would fix a lot. If a product uses generative output in shipped art, writing, voice, or music, you disclose that. If it uses AI only for internal assistive tasks, you disclose that too. 4 simple categories. People can decide what they care about. Some will not care. Some will care a lot. The point is not to force agreement. The point is to stop guessing. Awards are another predictable battlefield. Some people want a total ban. Others want no rules. Both positions are comfortable because they avoid hard decisions. The middle position is uncomfortable because it requires definitions and enforcement. But the middle position is the only one that lasts. Allow assistive uses that do not change final creative output. Require disclosure improvements for any generative contribution to shipped assets. If an award wants to celebrate human craft, it can set thresholds and categories and then enforce them consistently. The people asking you to stop demonizing usually want to skip this work. They want the public to do emotional labor for them. They want pre-forgiveness while they keep all options open. That is why the speech feels irritating. It is not an explanation. It is a demand for trust without terms. I also have a creative worry that gets buried under the ethics talk. A lot of generated output is smooth and generic. It loves the center of the bell curve. That is fine for placeholders. It is poison for a distinctive voice. Humans create by taking risks and pushing weird ideas until they work. A system trained to imitate the average will tend to produce the average. If you flood a pipeline with average and then ship early because it is cheap, you get more content and less character. That is why I roll my eyes when someone sells AI as a creativity engine. It is more like a convenience engine. It can get you to a first draft faster. It cannot tell you whether the draft is worth a damn. And when budgets are tight, there is temptation to treat first draft as final. That is where quality goes to die. I am not going to pretend there are no upsides. Small teams can prototype faster and scrap bad directions sooner. That can be healthy. But the upside does not erase the need for rules, because the same tools can also devalue creative labor and flood attention markets. So I will end with a simple test. If you are excited about AI, explain your policy in normal language. Do it without buzzwords and without guilt trips. Tell people what you do not do, and what happens when mistakes occur. If you cannot do that, you are not ready to ask for trust. If you can do it, put it in writing. Commit to consent for voices and likenesses. Commit to honest credits and clear labels. Those commitments reduce your flexibility, and that is good. Flexibility is often just another word for the ability to do something questionable later. One last point, because I can already hear the defense. Somebody will say that all of this is too complicated and that the public will never be satisfied. That is a convenient excuse, and it is also lazy. People accept complicated systems all the time when those systems are honest. We accept nutrition labels, age ratings, and safety standards. We accept that some tools are fine in one context and unacceptable in another. The public is not too stupid for nuance. The public is too tired for lies. If you want an evergreen rule of thumb, think about replacement. If AI helps a person do their job better and the person still owns the result, that is easier to defend. If AI is used to avoid hiring the person in the first place, that is where the ethical red flags pop up. It is not because the tool is cursed. It is because the outcome is exploitation dressed up as innovation. So do not lecture people about demonizing. Treat them like adults. Tell them where the tool touched the work. Tell them what data sources and licenses you consider acceptable. Tell them what you will never do. Then accept that some people will still dislike it. That is fine. That is normal. You are not entitled to universal praise. The funniest part is that if companies actually did this, the conversation would get calmer. The outrage thrives on uncertainty and suspicion. Clarity kills drama. If you are confident you are doing the right thing, you should love clarity. If you hate clarity, you probably know you are standing on something shaky. That is why I keep coming back to the same conclusion. This is not a fight between progress and fear. It is a fight between transparency and spin. If you choose transparency, people might still argue, but the arguments will be grounded. If you choose spin, you will keep getting accused and you will deserve it. So yeah, that's the whole thing. Use AI for the boring grunt work if you want, but keep humans responsible for what ships. If the final product has generated art, writing, voice, or music, just say it. If you're messing with someone's voice or likeness, get permission, because that's not a whoops category. Keep track of what you used and where it came from, because trust us isn't a policy. Do all that and most people will chill out. Don't do it and keep whining that people are being mean, and you're going to get dragged every single time. That's the deal.